This year, I read an incredible book called Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. It blew my mind. What is even more incredible is the fact that the book is not fiction, it's real. It was written by a Wall Street journalist named John Carreyrou and tells the story of Theranos, which is a company founded by Elizabeth Holmes. Theranos was Elizabeth Holmes' baby. It became one of the most famous unicorns in Silicon Valley. Now, just to explain, a unicorn in the financial world is a private startup company which is valued at over $1 billion. Theranos was valued at $9 billion in 2015. Now, you might be wondering what kind of startup company could be worth so much money. Well, Theranos claimed to have groundbreaking technology in which they could do a blood test using a single drop of blood. Now, in the medical world, this was an incredible development. Standard blood tests required one vial of blood taken intravenously for each diagnostic test conducted on it. Theranos claimed that their technology could conduct over 240 tests, ranging from cholesterol levels to complex genetic analysis, with just a single pinprick of blood taken from the finger. That was a system which was apparently so quick and inexpensive that it could revolutionize medicine and save lives all over the world. And in fact, when Elizabeth Holmes was promoting the company, she would often speak about an uncle that she had lost to skin cancer and stated that this had inspired her to launch Theranos. One of her most famous quotes was that no one, and I'm quoting here, no one should ever have to say goodbye too soon. It truly was a medical miracle and a lie, a fraud, and a complete and utter farce. In order to understand how a $9 billion startup went from such a value to fraud and deception, let's go back to its roots. So Elizabeth Holmes was a young American woman who had serious drive to succeed in life. When she was 9 or 10 years old, somebody asked her, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And she replied, "I want to be a billionaire." In high school, she started learning Chinese as she was encouraged by her father, and she even participated, or rather I should say, she managed to talk her way into a summer Mandarin program at Stanford University. In 2002, she attended Stanford as a student in the chemical engineering department. She was also a President's Scholar, which is bestowed upon the top students, and it also gives them a $3,000 grant to do whatever they wish. It was here that the idea of Theranos was born. Elizabeth's original idea had been an adhesive patch that would draw blood painlessly using microneedles. She pitched this idea to a medical professor at Stanford who told her that it was completely impossible. But Elizabeth carried on regardless. By 2003, she dropped out of Stanford and started her company, Theranos, at only 19 years old. Now, Theranos, which is a portmanteau of therapy and diagnosis, attracted a lot of well-known investors straight from the beginning, mainly thanks to contacts of Holmes's father. In its first round of funding, Theranos raised an incredible $6 million. And over the years, Elizabeth continued to do cycle after cycle of funding as she raised millions to fund her dream. The original patch idea eventually developed into a small device for collecting blood, which Theranos named a nanotainer, that was then put into an analysis machine, which was named the Edison. And Elizabeth chose this name after Thomas Edison, the American inventor, because he had failed many times before he became a successful inventor. which is what had happened with the development of the Edison. This machine was created in 2007, and although many of her employees told her that it wasn't functioning correctly, there were a lot of issues with it, Elizabeth didn't really care, to be honest. She was much more focused on how the machine actually looked, and she even poached some designers from Apple to help her design the overall look and feel of the machine. The main issue is that this machine didn't actually work. There were countless problems with it, and a lot of employees raised these issues, but they were either shut down immediately or even fired. The former Apple employees who started working at Theranos, the fact that they were there, it reflects her obsession with Steve Jobs and Apple. One of the new employees, it was a designer who started working at Theranos, had told her that Steve Jobs only wore black polo necks and trousers to work. And the following day, Elizabeth turned up at work wearing a black polo neck and black trousers, and she didn't change herself for the rest of her time at Theranos. In 2009, she brought in Ramesh Balwani, also known as Sunny, as President and Chief Operating Officer, but unbeknownst to her investors, they were in a relationship. Together, they ran the company under lock and key. They were extremely paranoid about other companies having access to their technology. They fired any employee who was not 100% on board. Anyone who raised doubts or issues were cast aside and forced to sign non-disclosure agreements to stop them from speaking to anyone else about their experience at Theranos. They were so paranoid, their headquarters even had bulletproof glass, and Elizabeth and Sunny were often accompanied by a security team. By 2010, Theranos had partnerships with Walgreens and Safeways, which are very big in the US. But unfortunately for them, Elizabeth had promised them that her technology could perform hundreds of tests on small blood samples, but this was also a lie. So Theranos, in a rushed way, decided to develop a new, more updated machine that could apparently handle this large amount of blood tests. Elizabeth named it the Mini Lab, once again referencing the size of the product. And according to former employees, the Mini Lab and the previous Edison machines were simply prototypes, but Elizabeth and Sunny treated them like finished products, hence why they were actually put into place in Walgreens and Safeways. So by 2013, Theranos was running in Walgreens and Safeways. However, the test results were inaccurate and there were discrepancies. Some people even ordered blood tests from other labs to compare, and they found serious discrepancies between them both. But somehow, Theranos managed to find an array of excuses as to why there were issues, and they managed to hold off the companies from completely ending the partnerships. By 2014, the media had caught on to this incredible new technology, and Elizabeth was featured on the cover of Fortune and Forbes magazines. By this point, she claimed that her company could offer more than 200 blood tests and would soon be able to offer 1,000 blood tests. She was completely out of control. Her web of lies was becoming more intense and more complex. Along with Sunny, they continued to lead on investors, convincing them that the technology worked. They used any means possible to hide their lies. They even hid a lab that they used, so that when investors were on site, they would tell employees not to go in or out of this lab so that they wouldn't actually know it was there. They also took advantage of legal loopholes, which meant that they were in a grey area between two big authorities, so that it was very unclear which jurisdiction they fell under, so they really took advantage of this. However, the turning point was in 2015. A journalist called John Carreyrou, who works at the Wall Street Journal, received a tip about Theranos. A former lab director told him about unethical and harmful practices. he started to investigate and spoke to many former employees, some of whom were so afraid they asked to remain anonymous. When Carreyrou published his first article in October 2015, Elizabeth, of course, fiercely defended her company, claiming everything he had written was untrue. However, now that the spotlight was well and truly on the company, regulators started to take notice and investigate. In January 2016, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or the CMS, cited concerns that one of the labs at Theranos posed a safety risk to patients. This was the beginning of the end. The partnerships with Walgreens and Safeways completely fell through, and eventually in July 2016, Elizabeth was banned from the lab testing industry for 2 years. Despite these setbacks, Elizabeth continued to insist that her technology worked. In August 2016, she spoke at a conference in Pennsylvania in the US and unveiled more so-called groundbreaking technology. Unfortunately for her, during the Q&A session, it became very clear that she was trying to hide something because she was being very evasive and she dodged a lot of questions. Articles written after the event highlighted the fact that Theranos had done very little to clear its name. A professor of pathology who was present at the event said her presentation, and I quote, had the feel of someone putting together a last-minute term paper late at night. A few years later, in 2018, Elizabeth and Sonny were indicted on 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and 9 counts of wire fraud. They both had to post a bail of $500,000 each and surrender their passports. Elizabeth's case will go to trial next year and she risks up to 20 years in prison. Eventually, in September 2018, Theranos was completely dissolved. According to John Carreyrou, who wrote the book, all in all, investors in Theranos have lost nearly $1 billion. This incredible story of a company who tried to follow the fake it till you make it mindset in Silicon Valley has caught the attention of an array of media outlets. But as well as that, there is a podcast which was recorded detailing the story of Theranos, followed by John Carreyrou's book. Then this year, HBO released a documentary, and in the next few years, there will be a film about Elizabeth and Theranos starring Jennifer Lawrence. So if any of you are going on holiday in August, I would highly recommend this book. It is absolutely fascinating, a page turner. And just to point out, Bill Gates has even written a review on this book. Elizabeth Holmes may have been Silicon Valley royalty before, but sadly, now all she is nothing but a cautionary tale. Thank you.